certainly may. Or I'm lucky I ran back into the house. Okay, call the roll, please.
We will. Mr. Bento?
Present.
Mr. Cody?
Yeah.
Ms. Durfee? Here. Mr. Lennon?
Present.
Mr. Mello?
Here.
Mr. Souza with us here. Ms. Jones? Ms. Epke? Here. Ms. Cook? Here. Ms. O'Dowd? Here. And Ms. Driggs? Here. We have a full house.
Alan, nice to see you.
That's big. I'm sure you are. The mystery therapy.
Different time than usual. I was time, I was there at 10. I think more people I know in this kind of physical therapy than anywhere else.
Good place to be.
New day is coming. New day is coming. Physical therapy, how are you doing? I'm as young as you want to. I've already been out there. I've done that several times.
Lucky presentation tonight is the fire department. Chief, you're on.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank all the members that came last Saturday. I hope we were able to give you information or some information that you needed or help you at least see how we operate. I will say that overall, the fire department budget, and I know there's a lot of things that are out there with it, it is, has a lot of moving parts to it. That's the problem. There's a lot of different people moving up and down, and rank structure for what they do and different things. So, and that's what Mr. Wojak and I are, there's a couple of numbers we're trying to kind of button up ourselves here to get on the same page. But I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, how you'd like to proceed with your budget.
So, you proceed at your own risk.
Well, that's optimistic.
Just start, items where there's not much change or no change from last year. If there's something you want to address, that's fine. If not, just kind of concentrate on the ones that show up.
Why don't I just go through what I have for the administrators and any differences that we can go from there. I agree with the administrator's number for chief salary. I'd be crazy not to, wouldn't it? Our captain salary, as is, that is the correct number. We only have one captain. The lieutenants within the department, 157,819 is the number.
So you have three?
I have 3 lieutenants, that's correct. The firefighters that are first class, the administrator, this is where we're kind of we're working on a couple of numbers, trying to make sure that we come across on the same breakdown of numbers. I kind of derived them a little bit differently, and I'm not sure how you'd like to proceed with that. Mr. Wojak's number is for first-class firefighters, $1,068,496. The administrators put it down where he was looking at is that there would be no one in second class. I'm looking at, I do have one firefighter who will be going to second class for $43,825.60. In the third class, this is what we're trying to tweak a little bit here, trying to figure out where the difference comes. The administrator was looking at $33,000. My calculation puts it at $79,000. But this, I think, is going to be a difference in between ranks where they move within a rank, trying to keep this down to where everybody was on the anniversary dates and such. Fourth class firefighters, I'm in agreement with his number, $174,161.40. We will have no probationary firefighters. So my bottom line that I'm looking at when I put it all together for all the firefighter ranks, I'm looking at $1,294,604.40. It's a difference of $18,953. And I think that's what we've just been trying to work on here, where that difference, the administrator's number is a little bit lower than what I have.
Could you just repeat the number again? 1,002,000.
$1,294,604.40.
Thank you.
And we talked about, we'll work a little bit more to find out where that difference comes, and I think that it may be in the fluctuation between classes, between promotional ranks. There's a little difference there.
So the takeaway is that we're still working on the salaries.
Yes, if that's okay with you, we'd like to, so we can pin that down a little bit better.
That's fine.
What I'm trying to do is capture the exact month. So some of our members have anniversary dates in the middle of the fiscal year, or around about the fiscal year. So I'm actually calculating the salary figures by, call them man months, person months, and go from there so that we're actually spot on. It's Samara and Corbishley.
Right.
One's in the middle of the year, and the other one's in the middle of March. So I'm either not capturing them exactly when they
And that's what I'm saying, I think it's just a date issue that we may be a little off on.
A lot of these guys are hired at more or less at the same time, so they're traveling almost like pairs through the system. So once we clean it up, it'll be clean.
I assume that one fourth-class firefighter is not worth $196,000.
It is a really good one.
Straight, I'm gonna lie about my age.
What is that all
Now,
about?
there's 5. You'll have 5.
5 or 4th class.
5 fourth class, okay.
5.
Correct.
So what are the other numbers that if we're gonna go do that? 1 captain, 3 lieutenants,
1 captain, 3 lieutenants.
first class?
No, lieutenants are...
No.
Our first class firefighters should be 21 first class firefighters.
Okay,
21?
21.
second class?
I have to go into their longevity to be able to tell you the exact breakdown where I've got them.
So that's a minor difference, right? So 4 months into the year, an existing second-class fireman will pass his anniversary date and be first class, at least according to my chart. And that's why I score him as 21 plus 8 months of that firefighter at first class.
Right. When the last version of this comes out, the numbers are on here, so that would be good to have proper.
Right, and that's kind of where the difference comes as to what we're looking at. I'm just trying to find that.
Let me just,
So if it's that bad, then just don't put the numbers in.
so the plan is for fourth class, you said that that number would change not from 1 to 5. Is that what I was
It's never
hearing?
been 1, it's always
No.
been 3 plus, it's actually 5.
Well, it says 1 here. It says 1.
There was one last
It was
year,
1 last year, so
Right.
this is part of, it just didn't get edited over here.
correct.
Right now,
So,
Wait a second.
right now,
1 captain,
right.
3 lieutenants, 21 first-class firefighters, 1 second-class firefighter,
Okay,
2 third-class firefighters, and 4 fourth-class firefighters.
okay, so that 3, the probationary fire moved up to the
We'll move up during the next year.
in the course of the year, okay, let's, okay, and then we'd have 1 additional hire, is that what you're,
No.
okay, but we're going from 1, 3, and we're going to 5. How did we get to 5?
In the fourth.
I'm not sure.
Fourth class, you said 5.
I said 4. I said 4. I have 4 fourth-class firefighters.
Oh, okay, so some, who said 5?
But on Wednesdays, you have 5.
Only if it's a blue moon followed by a green Tuesday. There's 32 firefighters, however you want to look at it, and that's just looking at the change. And this may be where we're having this little bit of a difference. But even no matter how if I tweak a line way or the administrative way, we're looking at a very small difference there that we just gotta figure out where this difference comes in.
how many probationary?
There won't be any.
Right now.
None.
Right today, and
We're
today,
doing the budget as of today, we're doing this as of today.
It says.
next year though, but I'm looking where they're gonna be next year.
These dollars will be,
Okay, but this says we got 3.
That's just, that didn't get edited.
Well, I understand that, but I'd like to get the right numbers, so.
Ah, okay.
0.
So there's 0, next year's budget, there will be 0 probationary firefighters.
now what about if those 2 retire, the 2 on disability, then would we end up with probation?
Yes, you will.
Sure. If anybody else leaves, you'll end up with probation.
Right.
They come in at probationary regardless of how much experience they have?
That's correct.
The ones on injured duty, where do they fall in this?
First class.
First class?
Well, this comes up to 32, is that right?
That's correct.
Because,
Not including myself.
not including you, Kirk. Okay.
This is uniform personnel on the street.
So what we've done is we just take the roster and we age it, assuming nobody comes or goes, for the purposes of budgeting for next year.
Can I ask you a question?
You can ask me anything.
I noted the end of the year transfers, they transferred $32,600 out of the base salary of firefighters. Do you know why they had that, to do that for some leave or?
Because we had, again, the same process, like we're sitting here right now. At the time we did that, I had to put budget for what I had for people at the time we created the budget. Then members left. I had members leave to go to other departments. That would be the difference between the first class salary and the probationary salary. So that was money that was there that we used to transfer over into cover other expenses that were in the salary items. It's just what we're doing right here. Right now, I'm telling you, this, looking where I am right now, to take the snapshot for next year, this is what I, going forward, would have. However, just like Ms. Durfee just said, if somebody leaves,
Right.
I'm going to replace them with a probationary fighter. So there is, but I don't know, that's not carved in stone, so I have to go with what I have.
So it's always in flux.
That is correct.
The reason why we aged the existing roster, the difference, the step from probate to fourth is not big, but the step from fourth to third and from third to second is significant. So in order to budget this properly, we have to get the timeline down.
Okay.
I thought we had it done.
Look at that. Okay. Overtime, and I know this is an issue, I am contracted to have so many guys on duty, no matter what. I can't change that. I have to have them there. That's what's in the collective bargaining agreement. We have 2 guys out right now that are on the long-term injury. Hopefully, we're going to bring that to a conclusion soon. Last year's where we are right now, if you remember, I sat here and I said, if everything else stays the same, we should, we'll be close. But that, I don't know what people are doing in home life as far as FMLA. I had 3 guys come in and put in for FMLA for 13 weeks of leave. I had another firefighter who ended up being sick quite a bit, which is blowing us out of the water, and then the other guys that had left on us, so. I'm not sure, I will tell you, and the administrator and I have talked a lot about this, I won't make it with 175. I won't make it. Unless there's some change somewhere.
Well, isn't it close to, I mean, if we keep on this way we're going, it'll be close to $400,000 for overtime? So, I mean, I don't know where
I
the
think the
175
number-
comes from, because, I mean, that's unrealistic.
I'm trying to find, Chief, do you have, I lost it. My
What?
year-to-date expenditures.
I got this
To
from
the end of
January.
December.
You will, I think last year when we talked overtime, you had,
34,279. No, sorry.
new,
That can't be right.
45,720.
It's more than that now.
Yeah, it's way over, I mean,
Well, it's not way over,
Well-
but it's that.
it is,
to what?
it's in a dangerous level, there's no question about it.
Yeah, and so now we're pulling from other accounts because it's just out of control, I would say. So you're asking for $433,680.
That was originally based on the hours of leave historically that we used. The administrator, because we are in negotiations, he has a plan that he was looking at, so, but I'm just saying, if nothing changes, and I'll never make it with this one.
Well, 175, with what's going on, hopefully it's taken care of with contract talks, but you don't know how long contract talks are gonna go. They can go on for a while. 175, we're gonna end up having the same problem because the problem isn't fixed.
My response to that is really simple. This budget line item is unacceptable.
Well, yes.
So there has to be a plan.
Right.
So it's been going on for a long time. I'm not going to condescend to anyone, but I'm going to go back to actuals. 2010 actual, this town spent $361,592 in firefighter overtime. It dipped briefly the next year to $182,000, then went right back up to $318,000 next year, and $413,000 in 2013, and then now we're looking at 300 plus, even if we put the lid on it. Right. So as far as I'm concerned, that is an absolutely unsustainable premium upon the base pay of this workforce. And so you have to find a way to solve it. And so I didn't budget 175, I budgeted 330, but I took a big chunk of it and put it in council contingency or future needs. With the notion that this contract negotiation in year one would have a solution to this problem. Whether it is in the form of extra firefighters to soak up time, to have a reserve or a deeper bench, or any other solution that would include legal action through the arbitration process to try to resolve the situation. I put the money in the control of the council rather than in this account. I'm anticipating that we would be at or above the historical average if we can let it. But at that point, what would happen is the only way we would make the payroll would be for the council to actually transfer the money. If you do it that way, do it that way. So you come with us and tell us why you're coming back every 2 weeks for more money. And that's really not the idea. The idea is to negotiate a contract and then fund the contract through future needs.
Can I ask at some point soon to get a breakdown of how you, I don't know if you can do it generally, it would give me comfort to know how you derive that number for the future needs. I know we discussed it, and it's a little bit difficult because you don't want to, publicize it.
Much more than what we've already said.
But you can understand our concern that, as of the end of January, actual spent on overtime is over $270,000. So, at least from my perspective, if there isn't enough in that council contingency to take care of reasonable negotiating needs, there is, the budget committee can go into an executive session if we want to consider doing that, so that we can get comfortable with how we derived that future needs. But from where I sit, I really need to be comfortable with that number because I don't want to budget something that's not going to work.
That number presumes that you're going to have a contract 1st of July.
And how realistic is that?
It can go on for a long time. We're sitting here with a $175,000 budget that's never been reached in the last 4 years or 5 years. So, to me, that's a pie in the sky number. And if you put $225,000 into that contingency fund for the town council for overtime, but then, okay, that brings it up to $400,000. Now we're getting closer, but what are the fences around that money in the contingency fund?
Well, John, first of all, it's totally unacceptable for the town council that this is going on. And we are trying really hard to try to fix this.
What is totally unacceptable?
That we are spending over $400,000 on overtime. It's totally unacceptable. And if you see where it was going, you would agree also. Every time somebody is out, we pay time and a half for that. All this sick leave is time and a half. We feel that this somewhat of an abuse of the system in some circumstances, and also the contract is allowing for this to happen also. So that's what we're working on right now.
Well, I'm assuming contract allows it, or we...
Well, there's a minimum manning. I'll explain it very simply, that there's a minimum manning. So if somebody calls out sick, we pay overtime every single
That's
time.
because suggestion, and there's not really a budget for it, I mean, it is in a way and it isn't. But the concept of minimum manning presumes a full complement of able-bodied people working. Should there not be, and this is a contract really idea, for every person out on IOD, injured on duty, the minimum manning should slide. So if you have a 7 minimum manning, if one person is on IOD, it slides to 6. If you have 2, it slides to 5. Even under the contract, I think it's arguable that you could say, look, the minimum manning predisposes a full complement of working folks get minimum manning. It's just,
All I can say is we hear what you're saying, and it's part of some of what we are thinking also.
yeah, it should be, particularly on IOD, I mean, that's the phrase, I guess, that, because that's a permanent status almost, injured on reserve, they're out for, okay? Should that not cause the minimum manning to slide? That's, okay.
Who requires the minimum manning? Is it the state?
It's contractual.
No, it's
contractual. It was in the contract.
The
actual firefighter.
The actual extra man was during the time of Glenn Steckman and you were president of the council when that contract was signed.
Before then.
No, I have the paperwork right
No,
here.
it was 2006 when we were in.
You know, the contracts get, what I'm saying is, in hindsight, it's wonderful, but the concept is you have a full complement of people. We never got to the point of IODs and how many people were out on that.
But you're supposed to look at all the scenarios before you sign the contract.
I'm sure we do.
I know, but you also have to look at what's going to happen and what is the cost going to be. And I don't know if that was truly looked at, because if you added the person and then when it went below that, I don't know, did anyone look at the cost going forward, what that was going to be for the town?
If I could, because I think, with all due respect, I think that the topic that we're on is beyond my control as the chief.
Yeah.
And with all due respect to the budget committee, it's beyond the budget committee too.
John.
And I recognize,
I don't want to see you stop killing each other.
I would just say one thing.
I just want to make sure that we don't do it again. I just want to make sure with contract talks that hopefully this is looked at very carefully before.
It's one of our major objectives this year.
I have one...
No, Don, your question. Go ahead.
I have one question. Does the contract spell out the meaning of manning? In other words, does it describe that the minimum manning is 8, and then does it go on to say 8 able-bodied or 8 fit for
7 men per
duty?
shift.
Shall be 7.
Shall be 7.
So Louise has thought that you might be able to count the people injured on duty as part of that?
Oh, my goodness, no.
I didn't think so.
Has to be 7. And
no, what I was saying is that it slides, even under the existing contract, I think it is arguable to say it presumes a full complement of people, and what you
beyond what
lose.
they agreed to do.
But it says shall.
No, but I think it's arguable you could make that argument under the existing contract, that's all I'm saying. It's a council matter, and I appreciate that, and, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
If I could just strike the last word. As administrator, I've negotiated fire contracts in other places and built the financial models and the analysis to support mindful negotiations. We can price everything out as soon as we discuss it at the table. We have a council president who knows more about the fire department than any other I've ever worked for, and a chief with many years of experience, both as a firefighter and as a chief. I think many of the very good ideas that have been aired this evening are things that we're talking about behind the scenes, but we can't, if we drill into any more detail, we'll compromise.
That's fine.
And John, The answer to your question is in the contingency. It's been quite a week and I remember your question. We have that 168,000, but in the contingency, like Matt said, is 400,000. We have, and that's what, so if July, well, first of all, we won't spend 174,000 until, well, at the rate we're going, probably the fall. Hopefully we'll have a contract. But the thing is, that money is there. So if we start to need it, it's there.
Okay, that's fine.
We just separated.
That at least.
We just said, this is what we want to spend,
That's fine.
but we haven't reserved this.
And I've done the same thing too,
But
with
it
negotiations coming up, so you don't tip anyone.
But it also keeps us in better tune to what's going on, because they can't take from that without asking us. So then we keep track of it better.
That gives me a little bit better feeling for it, but,
I'm just afraid they might spend on something else. I mean,
that was gonna be my question. Is that money in the contingency earmarked? Or can someone else come up to the council and request something and money is taken out of that contingency?
Well, first of all, not to be overly precise, because I hate people who do this, but since the accounts have different names, this is not council contingency, it's council future needs.
Okay,
Which in this
that's fine,
town-
and I like that better.
Been used in the past for raises for department heads,
Okay.
as well as contract negotiations. You take a pot of money and you put it there, and the
Right.
idea is you're going to settle your
Okay,
contracts.
that's fine.
I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I'm indifferent as to where you put it. Where I have difficulties, if you start putting it back into the accounts, you're basically saying to the guys, well, I think I can afford a 2%. You don't want to do that.
I have no problem with that, as long as we know the money is there, because that to me is going to be a very, very difficult negotiation to get that down.
the tentative agreement.
Because when you get into overtime, it becomes expected pay. Okay? And now, if you do away with it, everybody's upset because they're taking a pay cut. So, that's my, I just think it's gonna be a difficult negotiation, but if I'm convinced that the money is set aside, that's fine. We can move on to another subject, and I don't wanna compromise what you've got.
I'm gonna belabor this a little bit more, because the future needs has 150,000 in it. So if you look at this 3-year average, which is 300,000, right? So, and you're budgeting 175, we haven't been around 300. I mean, 300 is usually conservative in its own. So if you say 330, which I think you said.
325. But that's your average.
Regardless, we have 150,000 in future need to take care of salary increases, all the other associated contract increases, along with this overtime, and you think that's enough, 150?
To go back to my diplomat training, how should I respond to that? Please do not presume that all of the items you just described would be part of year one of any contract.
Are you saying some stuff could be phased in?
Assume that there's a 3-year plan, and the plan for year one involves the moves I've made in the budget.
Okay, well, I don't want you to compromise the negotiations, so I just want some idea
We have to
that,
give some leeway. He's going to make a judgment,
Yeah.
and the council's got to word with it.
I just need some affirmation that there's money sitting back there.
The council has to, yeah, but I mean, this is the council's budget.
Right,
So
exactly.
the assumption is that the council is comfortable with that 150,000, because it's the council that's going to be held accountable for it,
Exactly.
not us, and not you. If you run out of money, and we have to have a special financial town referendum and shell out money to have another election because we didn't budget enough money, it's the council that's not going to get elected again, not us. You're still gonna have your job, everybody else is gonna have their job. So,
Okay.
this is the council's budget.
That's not nice, Denise.
We can hear from
I'm gonna put a microphone in front of you.
Can I just need one more question. So you're saying 175 plus the 150 would be 325, so the 150 is in like an escrow in your account to be there, not your account, I'm sorry. So you're having it there to keep a close eye on.
And also to use it with what we're discussing in contract regarding
So it's
advertising. I can't say too much because we're going to...
That's fine, I think we've covered it, I think we've got a...
I just wanted to add to that.
I don't think it's problematic. What I would say to you is, if we're going to bargain in good faith, if we reach a settlement,
It has to be in good faith.
what would happen is, I would bring the contract to the council for its consideration and ratification, along with the necessary transfer from their future needs to the appropriate accounts. And they would fund it, or hold it back, depending on what their judgment was.
Right.
But that would be the idea. But we're just holding this back to the being lack of specificity.
And I think that's all we can look at right now.
Yeah.
Can we move on?
See how it plays out, so let's beat that one another.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
But we can't get, in the stage of the game, we can't get definitive.
Can we get, just address the fire marshal inspections increase?
Well, in some cases, where, I'm not trying to be cute, but where I know there's very little disagreement about the potential approach to the problem that we've identified in the department and are attempting to solve the contract negotiation, it does appear in the budget. So really, it's no surprise to the labor side that we're asking for a full-time day staff in this position to be paid at the county rate. Nor is it something that they have responded to negatively in this conversation. Now, I would say that everything is negotiable until it's negotiated. But in this particular case, there was so little disagreement, I wanted to take, if you don't understand how this works now, we pay guys overtime, 4 different things. And the notion is we would transition that to a full time.
Okay, it's just that fire department inspections it's not clarifying. I mean, I did not know you were planning to hire or assign a full-time inspector. It's certainly not clear from this budget.
Also, to create a full-time fire marshal.
Captain,
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just looking at this,
Right, so your captain count that's on the page is going to go from 1 to 2.
It's not going to be a line captain.
Never mind, it's going to be a captain getting the captain's pay, whether it's technically a line or a staff job.
It's a matter of presentation. I put it here in fire marshal list. I want to be clear about what it's going to be.
Well, do we collect fees for doing inspections, et cetera? Do we get enough money for fees?
That's what's 10 on electrical construction is done throughout the year. How many planning reviews are done?
how many are done now?
I don't know that I could give you that as a correct answer right off the top of my head.
Do those fees,
But Cecil's point is right, I mean, you probably should have 2 captains, one, just, because people looking at this, they're not gonna have access to all the backup. Just a suggestion.
I have a couple of questions regarding the fire marshal. I wanted to know, how many incidents do you have in 2014? How many, that would be different than going to fires and to rescues? Not runs, but in incidents, like how
I'm not
many?
sure I understand what you're asking.
I want to know, I guess I'm trying to find out how many times you go out for rescues, or how many every year?
We went out, last year we did just under 3,000 calls. Service.
Is that runs or?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm not sure. Are you asking for the entire department or for the marshal?
No, I'm asking for I'm trying to see how busy the fire department is. Is it here?
That was last year.
Response.
Yeah, in this last year, we did just under 3,000 calls.
All right.
Table that you put together last year that had some
Right.
history on it.
So the net fire responses comes up to 2790, so okay. So what's I couldn't find the overtime cost for the 4 fire marshals now that you're paying. What does that come to?
In the line item for marshal inspections, I think we knocked it back to 45,000. And the rate as of today, when we looked at, there's $17,000 left in that account.
Okay, so for 4 people, it's costing almost $50,000? What overtime you're saying?
Last year, we left 45,000. Then we cut back on
So it's
40,000, whatever it was, we got, yeah, 40,000 last year.
40. Okay, I
And
see.
how I worked that is last year, that amount was cut back to 40,000, so I take the 40,000 times the number of days I can keep the office open to try to get it from July 1 to June 30th, and that's how many hours a day that I can allot them to be in the office. As of right now, we're only looking 4 days a week.
No, I'm seeing that you're going to, I'm just trying to justify the cost because over $55,000 for a new captain, that's the salary only, with the benefit loading is approximately 40% of the base. So what does that come to actually, for the captain with the benefits?
And that's the administrative amendment.
75, 76.
So $75,000 as opposed to $40,000 for them doing some overtime.
The difference being you would have a fire marshal that would be 40 hours a week as opposed to right now they're 20 hours. Yeah, 20 hours a week.
How busy are they?
Every day they're out there. And all Wednesdays is full, completely doing smoke detector inspections for house sales, certificate of occupancies. And everything else is the rest of plan reviews, fire alarm inspections, and the licensing inspections that have to be done for the town.
But when you're going to take this person, are they already a captain, or are we going to make them a captain, like a
Again,
lieutenant
part of
captain?
negotiations where we get that person from.
Well, okay, but then we would have the need to fill. I mean, if we promote, then we have to fill. So now that creates a snowball effect, where now you're promoting, and it's costing more and more because they're getting higher pay as you promote. So I don't know what the snowball effect would be on actually having a captain someone be promoted from captain, then someone from first firefighter might then become a lieutenant, and then you have, how does that work like that?
This instance is, as a fire marshal, they have to be licensed by the state.
Right,
Okay, and the state fire marshal has to give them the authority to operate.
right.
The pay scale would be equivalent to a captain's pay scale as the administrator has put forward, but what it would be a fire marshal. There'd be no additional rank in there. So if it was right now, the people that I have, doesn't matter whoever it is, there would be no snowball effect because you're not adding to the line people. The only person you're adding would be the fire marshal's position. You'd still have your 32 firefighters. If I'm understanding
So
what you're asking.
you would be hiring from outside?
No, it has to come from within. You would take one of the guys that is currently licensed because their contract says that any division or anything that opens up has to come from within the rank and file. So they'd either have to test for it, or however the process is worked out in negotiations.
I'm trying to figure out the staffing. You're still trying to tell me that it's 32, but yet we're going to have some work as a fire marshal during is it the day? Just a day job?
5 days a week.
So what happens there? I mean, someone's kind of are they going to fires also? Are
They would also be going to fires additionally. They could also go to fires. They thought it would be part of the investigation at a fire. We would actually give us more personnel at a fire. but their sole responsibility is to enforce the fire code for the town of Tiverton.
And in essence, if agreement is reached to add the fire marshal, then the count's going to go from 32 people to 33 people.
Yes.
But then they're.
Well, wasn't that just what I was trying to say? We have an extra person?
Maybe I'm not understanding your question, because that's what maybe I'm missing what you're
We
asking.
would have an extra full-time position.
Yeah, that's.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I
We're
was,
already
They come in at the
We're already paying
probation.
4 people to do that.
If we took someone from the line to go be the fire marshal, then we would have an opening in the line, the people on the trucks. We would have a probationary firefighter come in to fill that spot.
But the cost of a fire marshal is being expended now, and it's divided among several people.
but it's less money, Cecil.
Well, I'm not sure that's true.
It's time and a half for less hours of work.
I don't
But
need
you're adding so many
me
benefits.
the 4 that are doing it, because that's far from what I'm,
I'm not
a
either.
full-time, trained, licensed, state-appointed fire marshal has got to be a better system.
Yes.
I mean,
No question about it.
so we're paying a little bit more money, but I think significantly upgrading the,
Not per hour, though. Not per hour, we're not paying more money.
Well,
That's because you're not paying the time and a half.
Per hour, it all depends. They got different, the other 4 guys right now, got different ranks and different longevity. So on a per hour basis, when we have a lieutenant with significant longevity, working time and a half to provide the
Right.
inspection service, it's very expensive.
yes.
But let me also point this out. Far be it from me to suggest this, but customer service has to start to become part of what we do. And what you don't get in the budget process is the calls to my office from real estate agents and other people who are saying, I'm going to closing, and all I need is a fire marshal sign off, and it's Friday, you've got to be kidding me that they're closed. And won't be back until Monday.
Well, that goes back to my statement.
So that's-
Full-time fire marshal, to me, is a much better system, and if it costs a little bit more money, it costs a little bit more money, but I think it adds to the professionalism of the fire department. There is a revenue stream to this also.
there's a-
That's right, that's right. You're absolutely right, Bill.
We don't see, but
Yes.
it's there, so
Yes.
it's not,
So,
it's not a
Yeah, I
total
don't-
expense. It's-
You know, having been on that side of waiting several days for a fire marshal, you're absolutely right. It is an upgrade to service in the town. The cost really is minimal. And it's the kind of thing that you really need to pay for in the town and support. It's just that I have actually gone to the chief on a Westport situation and asked him to assign somebody or call his chief to get something done in Westport. So really, it's a minimal cost, but there should be somebody with that responsibility who can go out and do these things that are required by state law.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, too. I mean, just a couple of points. We've been fussing about this for years.
15 years.
Trying to muck around, coming up with mandates and dealing with complaints. And the other thing it slows is you can't bring economic development to town and say, sorry, it's going to be 2 or 4 months till we can get your plan together, and no, so we don't have anybody working on Fridays to review your plan, and, you know, you can't do business like this.
Can we get a 5-year average of the revenue from the fire prevention?
Yes.
That's a good question we should do.
I think so we can move along.
I was going to say, let's,
I would say that I have enough confidence in the administrator and the chief that they can figure out the arithmetic between what
I
we're
do too, but
spending
we have to
now
see the revenue
versus
side of it
what it would
also.
be with a full-timer.
Yes.
So go ahead and say that.
Well, part of what goes is the smoke detector fees. We are allowed to keep those within the department, and we have. And one of the vehicles that I needed to replace was the fire marshal's car, but I had to move things around. And we were able to buy that with fire prevention money. We were able to take the $8,000. We bought a used vehicle, but we got something because of the money that we've been able to take in for revenue, and it was no cost to the town, other than having to license a new vehicle.
Okay, is there anything else in that, that section that people want to discuss? Everything else looks pretty well,
There's
pretty much
nothing-
straight across.
Nothing in the operating expenses that jump out at any of us.
The only one thing, Mr. Chairman, if I could make, and this fault is entirely on me. I gave the administrator a bad number in the holiday section, which would be 5107.
Yep.
You'll see a line item, the administrator was asking for 69,979. This is totally on me. I gave him a wrong number. I forgot to add in that there are, by their contract, there are 4 specific holidays that they receive extra pay for when one particular group works on that holiday, and that's a difference of $76.74.
So
The true number should be $76,056.59.
so the 76,057,
Is right.
57.
what you requested is the...
Yes, it was my mistake, it was not the, that was on me. I messed that one up. I gave them wrong information.
See that column back there behind your knee?
I'll beat my head up.
No, you're gonna be tied to it, you're gonna get
He
lashed.
made notations in a column, I couldn't figure out what they tied back to, so I used that column.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's like you kept the number he's saying, change it.
So the number you're saying is the same as what you requested?
What I requested, but on the administrative sheet,
Oh, I'm sorry.
on the administrative sheet, you'll see it as 69,979. And he derived that number because of my error.
Not a problem. That's why we do this.
Okay.
Should went through a lot of math, you did.
I know, you did a good job. Well, that's what I have to do, too.
Really, change, and I'm just calling it out so that you don't have to answer for it later, is in the 6912 account electricity, we have transferred Hambley Road radio transmitter to the police department budget. We covered that with Chief Blakey, the backside.
That's the reason for the decrease?
That's,
Right.
yeah, that's the reason why the increase won't be as significant.
Okay.
And I will say that the consortium that we're using for the electricity, even though that contract is changing, has saved us quite a bit of money. And the other thing that has tremendously saved us was the natural gas that we have in one of our stations. That's,
Which one, the North Tiverton?
North Tiverton went to natural gas, that is,
Oh, I know.
if I could get all 3 of them on it, I'd be a happy person.
Yeah.
It's a fuel oil is crazy, so.
Can you go to propane?
Propane's even more expensive now. Propane's very, very high.
Yeah, the library's gonna be heated with propane, we're in
Does
trouble.
that show up over on the police budget?
Yes, it does.
It does, okay.
Yeah, the electric, it went up.
I think I put it in both places. His went up.
Okay, so it's part of the 21,215?
Yeah. His went up from 15,000 to 21,215.
All right. Okay.
I'm not sure if there's any other part of that you'd like to.
Well, everything else is pretty well
changed.
Pretty well straight across, I mean.
The only other thing, and I'm...
Station building maintenance?
Yes.
If I could just back up the telephone for a second, because there is a, I'm being charged quite a bit of money. We have lease lines which operate part of our radio system and such like that, and we're looking at an increase coming in those lines. So, right now, I think the number that we got, 18.5, is going to be a little bit on the low side. I asked for 19.8, so I'm...
Which one is this, Chief? Telephone?
Oh, the telephone, which is 69.35.
Yeah.
You asked for 19.
I asked for 19.8. I think the administrator had asked for 18.5.
Denise has got extra money if you need it.
Okay, all right, that works. But again, I just want to mention it.
I also think we're going to explore a different approach here.
For the phones?
It's not the phones. Well, the phones, we need a different approach anyway. When that work is already started, really what happens here is there's connections between the fire stations on leased lines. You can explain it better than me, but the leases are very expensive.
Very much so.
And I don't really think, I'm not comfortable accepting Verizon's price. I would like to pushback on what they're asking us to pay for those lines.
Ring down lines.
No, it's just between, they're very complicated. Each station has a receiver in it. Each one of the lines has two pairs that come back to the main console, which go through the voter system. The voter picks up the strongest system and picks up which receiver is supposed to take it. Those are the leased lines. Those are a pair, they're called RTNA lines. Right. Well, no, T1s are much more expensive. RTNAs are the lowest you can buy, and they're $140 a pair. We were hoping to go over fiber optic, but Verizon decided that Tiverton is not going to get fiber optic. So we are working on some other solutions to it, but it's, yeah, I'd like to get to point, but that's a, there will be capital.
It's a different budget, my friend.
Yes, I told you it would be. Forget about it.
Hey, how about your maintenance on building?
I think I can work within what the administrator has given us as far as station maintenance. I think I can, we just have to cut back on stuff. The guys have done an awful lot of work on trying to take care of the stations. We have done some repairs, and I really think we've got a lot of the repairs done, a lot of the things that have brought us up. New roofs on the north end, but I do have two other roofs, which would have to be a capital project down the road to do, but we're looking at just maintaining, all the cleaning supplies, all the interior paints, all those things all come out of this account. I think I can work within this number that the administrator.
What was your plan for less than 45,000? What were you going to do?
Based on the track record,
What you are going to be able to do?
I don't know that it's one particular large project. We just have to cut down and all our paper goods, toilet papers, paper towel, all that stuff comes out of our account.
So that's all building maintenance. Toilet paper? Okay.
Well, that's what I do. I'm fine. That's it. I take over.
I don't want to cut that budget.
Chief, the medical director EMS,
Okay. I have for many, many years, part of having an advanced life support ALS system, you are supposed to have a medical director oversight. I want to be careful walking in this line, especially with the camera running back there. We have kind of skirted that issue. Part of making sure that we have good quality assurance and that we have oversight of our ALS, our advanced life support people, we are supposed to have a medical director. I've talked to St. Anne's Hospital, and St. Anne's Hospital, most medical directors get about $25,000 to $30,000. St. Anne's, with a contract with them, working forward, they would be willing to provide us with a physician oversight for that fee. He's not an employee of the town of Tiverton, he's an employee of St. Anne's Hospital. We'd be contracting with St. Anne's to give us a medical director.
Is that what the 8,000?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay.
and Chief, when you say that we're required to, who's the we? We are,
Town of Tiverton should have a medical director.
by whom? By whose standard?
Health Department should have someone looking over. It also helps with,
The Department of Health, State of Rhode Island?
we should have someone overlooking our ALS providers and providing good quality assurance for us.
Just to point out a theme, this has been a very difficult budget to work out any major theme, but you'll notice I increased the in-service training line for the police department from one year to the next. With this medical training, medical oversight here, we're trying to create a more professionalized environment in both of our public safety departments. We are in a competition for the best talent to be firefighters and police officers. We cannot compete on the basis of base salary alone, because we will not win that fight now or in the future. But if you can provide an opportunity for training and advancement in the context of these departments, I think our recruitment and retention efforts have a stronger chance of success. And it's little things like this, less than $10,000, that we should try to do if we can find a way. And so that's the theme that I've struck, and unfortunately, in order to try to keep the number modest on the expense increase from one year to the next, I end up cutting some of those things. But you'll also notice that the priority has been the rank and file and the police and fire. And so, in my budget, the administrator's budget, I cut the education stuff, cutting it in some of the other, the planning and other places. Because it's more important here, these people deal with saving people's lives every single day. We get our education for free, they need the training from pros. Just on my soapbox, I'm sorry.
That's fine. That makes sense.
And one other item you'll see again there is the I call it the unfunded potential liability for buyback contractual item. We have 2 people that will be eligible to retire. I don't know whether they are or not. Should be a bottom line that I have of $46,700. Is it not showing on yours?
No.
Or are you showing it somewhere else?
I think that gets scooped into the town's
Okay.
funded.
I was just gonna ask, why would you have it in your budget?
Well, I always try to, in my budget, when I submit it to the administrator, this is a potential buyback. Because what we've done in the past is when these people have left, we're always told, find it within your budget.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I can't do that. There's no way we can do that. So
No, I
try to provide that number, so that it's, wherever that goes, I'm not sure where it.
Unfunded liability, which is a standalone line in the budget, when we budgeted it at $55,000.
Yep, on page 11.
Page 11. I would.
Okay.
This iterative process yields information, passage of time that makes some of these numbers soft. And this 55,000 is soft. It needs to go up. That's a different line item in the budget. This is the council on Saturday. The information I got today about potential retirement, the town hall staff and the overhang on that in terms of sick vacation is a significant outlay. It was the first I had ever heard mention that retirement was possible, so 55 is a little soft.
You just gotta realize that the employees can walk in at a moment's notice and say, I'm all done.
Yep.
I've had that happen, and they,
Yes, why?
Pay me my 100 sick days.
pay me my time.
There's no requirement that they give you any length of
It's
time.
not, yeah.
There is.
So it's not- it's
So that you
not
can budget for it, so you can try to budget for it, but I mean,
Yeah.
But you
Oh, you
can't
can-
really,
It can happen within one fiscal year. We're fortunate that I know about this now before the fiscal year's budget is passed.
so you put it,
But if it had happened during the year, we would have had to scramble.
Yes,
together.
it happens frequently.
It does. Do you want to go to capital at all, or?
Yes, please.
by all means.
I don't have a bulletproof vest, but I really, I want to throw it out there that at some point in time, this town needs to, don't shoot me, Madam President. This town really needs to start thinking about capital and such, and one of those is a ladder truck. We really, it's not to be, it's not a toy, it's something that we really need to do. The other items that we're looking at, and the continued replacement of the air packs that we have. Also, I'm looking to replace my vehicle and move my vehicle down to someone else, because mine is very high mileage. The other one that I'm looking to replace, and I'll pass this around to you, is one of the fire prevention car that has, it's 15 years old, has 130 some odd thousand miles on it. It will probably come off the road at the end of March because of the body rot on it. It's a good car, it's a really good car, but it's just rotted away. It's old, 15 years. So we've got, and we paid $2,000 for it. Again, what we bought out of fire prevention money.
Chief, where, the hose?
Try again?
The hose replacement?
The hose replacement, we had put that inside of, remember last year you had put that in part of minor equipment replacement? And you'll see that in there, there's an additional $5,000 for hose replacement in there.
Yep.
We made that an ongoing project.
Yep.
I have in here, you'll see, and it's probably in there for most of them, is the ongoing payments for apparatus. Well, one of the things we really, again, we put in a 5-year plan to replace equipment.
I don't know what's up or down.
It doesn't matter.
Well, you're looking up at the rust.
It's on.
It's just air conditioning.
It's air conditioning, right.
Okay.
We've,
Save the farm.
we put in a capital project or capital fund to replace equipment. And every year we kind of hear, this is not the year, this is not the year. When we push back on the need to replace equipment, it just rescue trucks usually are replaced every 4 to 5 years. The one I really need to replace right now is 8 years old. By the time we put specs together, go out to bid, they build the truck, it'll be another year before we get the truck. So it'll be going on 9 years old. Right now, it's at 150,000 road miles, but on those vehicles, when you look at them, you usually triple the amount of miles because there's a lot of idle time on it. Yes, we have gone with bigger trucks to try to break that down. I've got a report from the mechanic that it is starting to develop a lot of electrical problems and a lot of oil blow-by on it, which means that it's coming up to have the engine blow on it. So it's the truck in the south end. It has it has a lot of road miles because it's coming from the south end up to Charlton and St. Anne's. We're looking at about $240,000 to $250,000 to replace that vehicle. We had a rescue payment last year that we dropped. I would have liked to have seen that we roll that over into another payment, but we've got to get onto a schedule and stay on a schedule with replacing apparatus. We don't do anybody any good by holding off once we do it.
Matt, is there any discussion to creating a capital fund so that we can avoid interest? I just went over to the treasurer's office the other day just to get a sense of how much interest we pay on some of these vehicles. A fire department pumper, a rescue and an engine truck, a DPW plow truck, and a mat truck. So five items. It's $225,000 in interest that we lay out. Basically, I mean, I don't get anything out of it when we get the vehicle, but it's money that just goes poof. And I've been places that had an ongoing capital outlay fund that was budgeted right at the beginning of the budget process, and it was almost inviolate.
She's saying
Well, I
that.
don't know, but, you know.
Yes, I am.
It's one thing that hit me in this, in between the police department and the fire department, and then talking to DPW the other day, that we spend an awful lot of money on interest. I mean, that $225,000, now that's over, the time frame is from 2011 to 2021, so depending on when it was bought and so on. But that's a lot of money. That's, you know, that,
It's another rescue truck.
yeah, I'm just going to say that. It's a rescue truck, it's new equipment for DPW, whatever we think that should be based on what we've done in the past. I'm not including the school buildings, that's a whole different issue. That's legitimately a finance, a bond issue. But it just seems that if there was some way of ever doing that at the beginning as part of the budget process, we'd save a hell of a lot of money.
Mr. Chairman,
So,
I brought this up a long time ago. The minute we started third-party billing, if we would have taken that money that Judy brings in, she's bringing in close to $500,000 a year. And we put all that to buy capital equipment, we could have bought everything cash. Everything cash, no interest. But we had to take that money and go spend it every place else.
that's right. That's why it has to be, however you do it, it has to be a restricted fund so that you can't do that. That's the only way it can be done.
There's nothing to prevent the budget committee from having a referendum, which would say that, to start, $25,000 of any surplus left over from the appropriations, wherever they come from that have not been spent, will be set aside in a capital fund at the beginning of
Resolution.
resolution and do that. And whether it's 25 or 35 to start it, because those monies will go into our unfunded, our general law fund.
General fund, yeah.
And, but to start it, and to say, okay, we can maybe add to it another year, but to start it, because we don't spend everything. It's surprising, but we haven't. And it's nothing to prevent the budget committee from doing that or making that recommendation.
I just think it's something certainly to
It's hard to do with the budget when,
think very hard about how we could do it and propose how it can be done, because you have to come up, you have to fund the budget, while at the same time seeding the capital fund.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
That brought up a long time ago. If we done that, we buy fire trucks, even stuff for the highway department, you can get deals with it. If you got the money in your hands,
Straight.
you can talk to them, boy. They want to listen to you.
No, it's the same as going to buy a car. You walk into the car with your checkbook out.
It's not all the time. I went with the chief, we went to the fire chief's convention, where we had $500,000 in our hand. We had dealers up there that didn't want to talk to us.
Anyway,
That's fine.
We went to the one boy we've been happy with.
You find someone who will or has a good product. I mean, but I just raised that issue because I see what, scrambling in here and line items.
Haven't thought about that?
And,
No, absolutely. Best practices would be to have, I would refer you to financial statements for Dedham, Massachusetts, and Wayland, Massachusetts, Foxborough. Don't have to go to super wealthy towns. Foxborough, Gillette aside, is not super wealthy. You have a general fund balance that is your emergency in case the sky falls. Taxpayers get upset when that account grows too much. What is done in a lot of places in Massachusetts, they call it free cash. Free cash reaches a certain percentage of operating expenditures. All the overflow goes into a dedicated capital account. And they buy capital from the capital account. We sold Judson Street as a town. One-time revenue bumps should go into capital accounts to allow you to catch up and stay ahead. And, that's the thing that...
general fund.
Well, it's fine if your general fund levels are at a healthy.
But I feel like it's kind of like, it's the same thing when you ask a physician, a busy physician, especially an OR physician, when's a good time to go on vacation, really? In their profession, it's never a good time to go, right? There's just a time you go, and there's a time you have to do a capital budget. But you also need a capital improvement plan.
absolutely.
And we actually are in violation. This should be part of our comprehensive community plan. And you have to flesh out the conversation and say, what is the useful life of an ambulance? Is it 10 years? No, probably not. It's probably 8, if you really stretch it out, 8. So then you would replace one of your 2 every 4 years.
Right.
You could take your third-party building and you wouldn't have to take the whole amount. You just take a quarter payment each of those 4 years, and you get to the 4th year, you'd be right there. The ambulance would be paying for itself. There are a lot of concepts, but it all has to be put in a plan.
Yes.
Because the big bumps in the road, it amazes me how expensive fire engines are. Street sweepers are not cheap either. There are a few things that we buy, and the new Mack trucks that we bought, which may pay for themselves over the course of their useful life because they're so much more efficient than salt and sand, and they can take the hills here in Tiverton, but they're $155,000 each. So these are non-trivial sums of money, and when they hit the bottom line suddenly on the taxpayer, it's just awful because it throws us into shambles.
Can you buy anything like that regional to where, like, who else needs these things, and you buy it like with a couple of other towns? Is there any type of thinking like that?
We absolutely should be doing that, and we should not be using mutual aid as a proxy for that. The Chief and I may disagree. I do believe there's a time and place for a ladder truck given the situation, and thank God Fall River has one. But things like pothole machines, crack sealers, things that, it's just way too expensive to buy on your own, and you won't use it enough to justify the expense. But what you would save in roads, if you actually took care of the nice roads you have, instead to backfill over time with the more damaged roads, there's a whole thought process of when you actually end up saving a tremendous amount of money in the course, but it takes 10 years, really it does, from the day you start, to when you really start to see the benefits of it.
But we've never historically really explored leasing equipment, say, from Fall River, like pothole fillers. They have equipment that I know they don't use full-time.
They should.
But yet, and I've had conversations with town council members in Fall River, and they're perfectly willing to have discussions like that. But because we've got that magic line called the state line, everybody says, oh no. And the last time we changed the charter, there was actually a provision in the previous charter that precluded us from crossing the state line. Even though we were doing it all the time with all sorts of agreements.
I was thinking on the fire department side. Since, in the 10 years I've been here, the boundary as per se, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, has eroded. That is the fire department side.
That's one of the few. But I have a tough question for you. If you look at the money you're going to spend, okay, we're spending money, and I'll just call it X money expenditure on the fire marshal. Are we better off, rather than hiring a new position, are we better off taking some of that differential, the alpha, the change, and starting to put that in capital fund? And you don't have to answer that question now, because that's a really difficult question.
It's just the point.
That's the kind of trade-offs we're getting down to.
Because the fire inspections is you have to do.
Yeah, I understand that.
So,
Believe me, I understand. But we have a limit. We have a 4% cap, and we're banging up against it. We've got some bond payments that are going to have to be made. Those aren't.
Guaranteed.
If I could just add in, several years ago, the third-party rest we're doing, under my reign, was $225,000 that was turned over. And we had this very same discussion. Can you increase your revenues? Can you increase your revenues? We took Mrs. Ferrera's, who's the billing clerk, we took her hours and increased them to 40. I was hoping that we would see $70,000 to $100,000. Well, we went from 225, now we're almost up to 500,000. And what we did as a town, and I'll include myself in that, in the town, is we just took that money, and so we need to offset the tax rate. We had suggested at the time, take 100,000 of that and put it in this restricted account. I understand that you need it to lower the overall tax rate to burden on the taxpayers. But I think what Mr. Cody is talking about is exactly that same thing. We get these increases, instead of capitalizing on them in a way that would help us long-term, we take that short-term fix for
Well,
it.
that's just not a capital fund is not something that just happens.
Right.
You have to make the specific decision, and that you're going to do it, and then figure out how you're going to do it, and then make the proposal on how you're going to do it and how much money you think based on history or whatever. And Matt mentioned it because I've worked in both Dedham and Foxborough and been part of that process from the school department side. So that you have to lay out a 5-year capital plan, and then every year you add a next year for it, so that you have a spreadsheet that goes along the way, and you know exactly what you need to set aside, what you're gonna buy. Now, God forbid, something can happen, and you have to, mix it around a little bit, but you're planning, and planning is the whole key to some of these financial issues that we're not in a mode of having to react every year to something, as opposed to planning.
Can I make a suggestion? It's sort of at the end of our budget, because just having a full session about how we do these things is not very productive. Somebody's going to take the lead at some point, whether it's the administrator, and say, here's a proposal for your consideration. We have been talking about, it's not just 20 years. I have memorandums from the council. 30 years ago, we talked about a capital plan. So this is not a new subject. Everybody must be absolutely bored with it. But there may be some proposals that really should be considered, and I think the administrator you're the guy that's responsible here, so.
Why hasn't never happened over the years?
Because
Because it's a tax, you know, because people don't like taxes.
Other priorities rear their ugly head.
Yeah.
Yes, we're gonna set aside X number of dollars for that, and then all of a sudden, the DPW chief comes in and says, oh,
When
by the way,
Rob
my mean truck
Coulter
just
was on, your
collapsed.
friend Rob Coulter, they talked about capital budget. It was not a new subject, believe me, but somebody has to make a proposal, and then people have to say, okay, that is workable. The suggestion of having some monies, for example, you could have monies over and above 200,000 returned to the general fund at the end of the year, but 10% of it could be put into a capital fund.
Restricted capital.
Right. It doesn't affect the budget, it does, but something like that. I'm not saying that's the only alternative. Somebody's got to put it forward.
Well, that's one-
The budget the budget committee could do it.
Yeah, that's one source of funding, it doesn't have to be the only one.
No, but
I think your
it's
idea,
a start.
your idea of putting that into the budget, into the
As a resolution.
Resolution, absolutely.
you
But
know,
then, I think it's a good idea, I would just, before because I know everybody's tired of it, but I'm just going to throw a couple of things in the mix. There has to be some thought given to who makes the decisions on how that money is spent, which is why I have some issues with taking the money, the revenue from the ambulance, because this should be a town capital equipment fund, not a fire capital equipment.
Oh, I absolutely agree. That is not the only.
Right, but that's just one perspective on it. And there are good policy and government reasons why all fees go into the general fund. So I think how that fund is managed is, should
We
be
could
careful.
put that in the referendum.
Right.
We could say this should be allocated as the budget committee with the voters. I mean, however, or a joint, whatever. But there's a way of working it out, but, there's nothing to prevent the budget committee from doing that.
I think it's a good idea to put it in there, because especially that those go up for vote individually, right, on the financial referendum.
Although
You get people to have a say in it, I mean.
And although we don't have a full-blown capital expenditure plan like we should have, and I love spreadsheets, but everybody does it, so, but we have a rudimentary one in terms of the budget, because the council has ranked certain priorities. So that's at least the beginning of a rudimentary capital spending plan that can be linked to the creation of a fund. And I agree with everybody that, the longest journey starts with the first step.
Absolutely.
And so I think it would be a very good move for the budget committee to make that first step.
But it says in the charter that we're supposed to have a capital plan, a long-term plan, and so we're in violation of the charter, and it's been in violation of the charter for a very long time. On page 8, I think it's 407, section 407.
We have a capital plan, it's just not particularly beefed up.
We don't seem to be following through with anything, because we've got this problem, whatever it is.
Money plan right here with the engine that we're
For the whole town? For the whole town?
I don't think we should hold up the chief here because of our desire to do something, so.
Can I ask about?
He's the one who paid me to bring it up.
I have no problem,
Don't worry, he doesn't get over it.
I have no problem, because I do think, and neither do we. I think it is that important, and I don't think it's just important for my department. I think, I have needs in my department, Public Works, Police, Recreation. Every entity in this town to serve the citizens has a need, and we have to sit and address that at some point in time.
Yes, sir.
I just make a comment, we were just discussing this over there too. I think it's a great idea for what you're talking about, but I think what we should do is, let's take a look at what surrounding neighbors are doing. If they have a capital account somewhere, it might be Prospect, might be Middletown, might be Newport,
No, you can.
and see how they do it, see who controls it.
Yeah.
Just take a look at that. for starters.
Be my guess?
I think it's a great idea. BMO wanted this for a long time.
Well, I just,
People did.
yeah, and it's never gonna get started unless somebody starts.
Absolutely.
So, you know, and...
All right, I'll put up the first dollar.
And I'm sure somebody out there is...
Chief, I'll match it. Yeah, I think we beat that one up. Okay.
Laura says she has a question for me.
On the rescue,
I got a credit card.
Yes.
so Rescue 1, I'm looking at the last year's book that you prepared with the capital plan in it. So you have Rescue 1 up for replacement for this budget. So that's what we're seeing there. Then I'm looking at Rescue 2.
Which we just replaced, just recently replaced Rescue 2.
Oh, right. The Rescue 2 is the next up for replacement. Is this fourth or fifth payment, has that been updated, or is this the fifth payment? Seems to me it should be the fifth payment.
It's usually handled to the treasurer's office, Laura. I put down what I believe the payment is, I have not.
Right, not in the backup. On your,
Down here.
Yes, it's
Yeah, it should be coming up for the last payment on that truck.
That needs to be updated as well.
no, it isn't. Last year's, fiscal year 15 was the third of 5 payments. So this has been updated. So fiscal year 16,
Yeah, we paid $49,034.
okay, so it's the fourth of 5 payments. So we're gonna have the fifth payment on Rescue 2
In 17.
for the fiscal year 17 budget.
And we'll start the payment on the other one.
And we'll start the payment on the other one. So this Rescue 2 that you have in your capital plan for fiscal year 17 is not gonna happen.
Apparently not, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to explain, when you push everything back, because if we stayed at a 4, actually even pushing it out to a 5-year cycle to replace that truck, it's now, because we're looking at the payment side of it, it pushes that truck farther out. So now that truck is gonna go even longer.
So a 4-year cycle is what you're looking at.
I'm shooting for a 4, but I could live with a 5. An 8-year cycle is way too much.
Because then you double it off.
Yeah.
Well, this would put you on a 5-year cycle, right?
If we push back Rescue 2,
I don't know. Next year is the last payment. It's the 5th year on Rescue 2.
Correct.
So fiscal year 17 is the last payment on Rescue 2.
Which makes it
It's the
5 years
first-
old.
Right, and it's the first, so then the following year, when it's age 6, it gets a new one, so it's a 6-year cycle instead of a 5-year cycle.
Right. But in the meantime, Rescue 1 is 8 years, and we're gonna push it to 9 years.
No, Rescue 1 is on to buy this year.
Okay. I'm not sure, I wasn't following what you're saying, but that's what I'm saying.
To clarify, I'm trying to accelerate this replacement cycle by a year out. So, in other words, you're in a 5-year cycle now, replacing one at a time. So
Right.
each one is expected to last for 10 years. You have 2 rescues, divide the useful life in
Okay, I
half.
see what you mean.
So every 5 years, you're
Okay.
starting, I would like that to be 1 to 8 and go to
Okay.
4.
Okay.
I'm concerned about this particular piece of equipment and the wear and tear. I've had the conversation with the mechanic. That's why I put it in the budget.
Okay.
Because driving a farm, a truck on the farm, if it broke down, we fixed it. It could break down over and over and over again, it was still a useful item for us. Ambulance breaks down once at the wrong time, man, you're in the world to hurt.
And is there any salvage value to the one, I mean, we have a new, one coming in, you're head chief on this one.
It's an excellent question. So right now, if Rescue 1 right now were to be retired to our reserve, it would be a solid, worthwhile, credible reserve unit. Because the reserve we got,
This is 2005.
you know, if you got that, that's what you would do. It's questionable. So you always have to have in the back of your mind, we do sortie the reserve 12 times a year for roughly a week each time.
Yeah.
So it is in service about 3 months of the year. And if it's not a good, strong unit, you're, again, taking the same risk you would with that truck.
How the process works is, you take it, when you take your older truck, you get the new one, you take the older truck, you move it to reserve. We take the reserve, right now what I would do is take the reserve, because it's not up to snuff to be a medical rescue anymore, and I would replace what we call the squad, which is a truck that carries all the water rescue gear and the ice rescue gear, and Chief Blakey was looking for a vehicle for his accident reconstruction. Hopefully there would still be something left, because I know the squad is in bad shape, the chassis is rotted on it. But I give it to him, anyways. I like him that much.
In general, the chassis and even the engines hold out on these trucks okay. The problem we end up with is manufacturer quality on the box. The electronic items go bad, the latches on the containers go bad.
These trucks are really driven by electronics, so.
And our guy can't do it.
Well, just so much you can replace on them, that's the thing.
Okay.
All right. What else we got from you?
That tower ladder, that would really be nice to drive with it.
Quit while you're ahead, chief.
I'm trying. Louise, if I didn't bring it up, you'd be disappointed.
I think we should move along to Harbor and Cultural Management Commission.
Go ahead, Al.
The new center station, where the wall is going to the wall, that's shot, and the wall is pushing on. We're going to repair that, and then we're going to let the schools do that too.
I have talked to the two maintenance people, and we do not have, I'll be honest, Alex, I don't have a plan to how we would fix that right this second. They have looked at it, the wall is deteriorating, it's where the two valleys come together. The back, when they put the back addition on, there's a low valley that runs into the back of the apparatus wall, yeah, and it's eroded all the block there. But we have talked to them, we are looking at it, but I couldn't sit here and tell you right now I have a plan on how to fix it. If it was something that we could do without too much fanfare, that would come out of the building maintenance. If not, that would be something we have to
get destroyed over there.
We have water coming out of electrical sockets at the DPW line too. It's been a bad year.
I have water coming out of my garage.
I didn't have any water at all last Wednesday, that's why.
The window room, Sac County.
Harbor Commission?
Mr. Chairman, anything else I could add for you, any question, any members of the committee? If I have not asked anything, or haven't answered anything that you would like, please feel free, glad to come back at you or whatever you need me for to answer any question.
It was good,
And
we
you got the
appreciate
shot on
it.
the weekend, which was great, it was a great tour.
Thank you, people.
Thank you all very much for what you do, appreciate it.
Thank you, people, for being around on Saturday. I mean, I know they were on duty, but still, it was a good tour.
It
Well,
was.
they all whisper afterwards, what are they doing, what did they say? They don't know what they see.
It's impressive what people can do for themselves. And it's unfortunate and maybe unfair that in order to have good conditions at a fire station, a police station, that the people there have to take it upon themselves to do it, but because of them, I think they... It's your house. Well, that's right, but theoretically, we should be providing a house for people to live there, but they go way above the call.
I have, like any place, I have some people who are difficult, but for the majority, I have a lot of guys who take a lot of pride in what they do and do get.
They obviously know, you can just tell very proud of the buildings. So, I appreciate that, please pass it on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mike, you want to say anything about Harbor Commission? Our coastal management, I mean, but we just let it go and follow what, I mean, you've said what you need to say in your presentation, so, and that's fine, that's good enough for me. But, what we want to get into, if we're not going to do much with that, is pensions.
Pension plan?
Yeah, that's...
Police. Can we talk about the police pension?
Can we efficiently dispose of that harbor and coastal management and check that off?
Well, I don't want to dispose of them, but we can check it off. They read the grand budget presentation.
Yes.
It's here. So,
But we had questions though.
Okay.
well, then,
Contact the guy who's the harbor master, see if he can come and explain that to us, or?
Well, we questioned the increase in the line item for the boat operations.
Yeah, that was, probably didn't know that.
The boat operations, I think we had a question about why that keeps going up. We're supposed to
it's
save.
toward the end, I think.
If I remember.
I think it's on page 15,
That
John.
that was years ago. During the conversation with the boat, it was supposed to save us money on,
Yeah, it's supposed to save us tons of money. Yeah.
but it keeps going up.
Right.
But every year we harp on the harbor master. And he's not getting the assistance, and
It's a new one now, isn't it?
5250 is like nothing.
Looks like nothing.
His
Salary.
salary? It's, yes, it's not even hardly a stipend.
Almost a stipend.
So I don't have any particular, I mean, I'll make a motion to approve provisionally approve the harbor master's budget as recommended by the town administrator for $21,110.
I'll second that motion.
Well, it's two, that's the harbor master, what about the,
We voted on it.
we voted on the harbor coastal management?
Yeah.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that. Somewhere, okay. Do we have a second?
Joe.
Joe seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Nancy opposed?
No.
Oh, all in favor?
Yeah.
So it's unanimous. Okay. And that was... Okay. So, I guess now we can move on to pensions. Louise?
Just by way of background, we're dealing with a budget where we started off in we had to make up $600,000 from, I don't want to get Nancy Driggs to write another letter about me, but I'll call it a transition year. Thank you. We have to move from having $600,000, just so we're all on the same wavelength, paid out of our general fund savings account, we'll say, and move that to taxpayer funded. Okay? We all agree with that. So when you look at the budget, how are you going to do that? And when I read the actuarial report, and I'm looking really at the contribution recommended, I think the administrator recommended $700,000, which is a drop from last year of $800,000. As you look at what is the contribution recommended, for beginning July 1st, 2014, and that's the most recent one I have, it has total computed minus the member portion, town's net computed contribution rate.
536, 635?
536. And in a year, when we're trying to make up a $600,000 deficit, however you describe it, those $600,000 are now expenses going to be paid by taxpayers, unless we have another item. So how do you get there? Well, one way, and it's not an ideal way, but if you picked up, because the expected member portion is 145. If we put in 536, you'd get to the 700, but it would be a taxpayer savings of this year only of about $150,000. That $150,000 would go a long way to cover some of the expenses that are needed, that may be needed. It may also be to hold the tax rate a little more manageable, so we don't bump up against the 4%. And if you combine that with a possible refunding of the $3,700,000 of the high school bonds, and we still don't have a number back from the treasurer on that, that could be a savings of $200,000. If you add, now, and I'm not saying that's, you know, Rybeck needs to pass that out, but if we save 150 here and a possible 200,000 on refunding the bond issue, I mean, I'll be glad to go over this again, but you have a substantial savings, or you have money available to do some things that needed to be done. Now, and that was a thought that I want everybody to shoot at me, but I gotta tell you, in a year when you're transitioning 600,000 into the tax rate, because that's where you start. We don't have this little slush fund we can tap into again. You have covered some ground if those two things are possible. But since we're only talking about pensions at this point, there's some savings here. So,
Possible savings.
yeah, I mean, I don't think we'd lose so much if we could have the treasurer just say, okay, that 540 would be paid in immediately into, and let the investments earn some money throughout the course of the year.
I think she does that.
We do that already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you do, so, but I think there's some savings there.
Can I ask a couple of questions along those lines? Do we have, you don't have a copy of it, we haven't seen the audit yet, that's not been presented to the council yet?
Yeah.
It has?
Yeah.
Do you have a copy of the audit with you? Do we know what was paid out last year?
Yeah.
That is the page that I like to see, because, you know, the actuarial report is one thing.
Right.
The real numbers are another thing. So, the budget committee should get copies of the audit. I think Nancy will
Yeah, and
probably be
we've been
preparing
asking
for
for
us.
that for some time.
But there's one specific page in the audit that shows you, you know the one I'm talking about, that shows you how much money was actually paid out in benefits. And for several years, we were paying out more than we were putting in,
Yeah,
which was a real big issue.
yeah, and Mrs.
So
Sahadi
that-
presented that the other night.
That's why it's important to know that, it's an important issue.
The other, you know, I would want to know, if you look on page 4 of the actuarial report. Yes. Yes, he got copies of it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, two meetings ago, because
Oh, this here?
Yes, yes.
What page?
It's the page 4 that's a landscape.
Yeah.
The other thing is that it's not just what we paid out, but also the total earnings on the fund as of the...
Exactly.
But we asked the treasurer, and I know she's had some issues, but we need some of that information.
You have the ARC, which would show up, whatever it shows up for that year. And then you have the interest on the net pension, you have the interest, then you have the adjustment to the required the yada, the unintelligible numbers. Then there's the annual pension cost, which is a real number. Contributions made, what did the town put in, what did the employees put in, what was the increase in the obligation? So you can see, it's very easy to say, in my mind.
The funded status of the plan in 1 year, because this was July 1st, so 54.8, and it went up to 63.2.
Well, are you looking at page 4?
I'm looking at page, no, I'm looking at page 1 on the funded condition of the plan.
If you look on this page 4,
Yeah.
because this has to do with the agreement that we made with the state.
That's my question. Where does this fall in line with the agreement that the state accepted as our plan to replenish this account?
Well, I recently talked to the Director of Revenue, and she said the town was doing well.
Right.
They wanted a 60% funded, and we're at 63 as of this date now. I don't think that's going down very much.
It's based.
But I agree, it should be verification, but...
Right, but if you compare this to other years, which I'm just seeing now, which is a really nice thing to see, and maybe I can do it to last year. If I remember correctly, if you looked at this last year, when you look down that expected contribution, remember how we looked through this? And you see there were 700,000, 700,000, 700,000. If I remember correctly, when you went down that line, all of a sudden, we were paying 715 and 720 and 730 and then up to 8.
It goes higher
Guess what? It's going down
because your funding gets more.
because we were maintaining, because we put in 800.
You're chewing up the obligation factor.
It's not just the contribution, it is the earnings. As they say, we had a 13% earnings, so the stock market has really helped.
Although we can't count on that. I wouldn't count on that.
I wouldn't count on
No, but it's
13%
built up over a
consistently.
period of time.
I wouldn't count on 13% consistently, but I would sure, I'm a lot more comfortable doing something like 4 or 5, given the money managers that we have now as opposed to the ones we've had in the past, and the amount of attention that's being paid.
But you know, as you looked at what Bank of America did in 13, they did a very credible job. They hadn't in prior years, but 13 was a very good year for them.
I would hope so.
Yeah, no, it was very good. I'm not saying this is what we should always do. What I'm saying is, there's some issues that really the council is going to be facing. And what my thought was, if there's some savings here, maybe it's not 100, maybe it's 100, but that would go a long way to helping us get out of the hole.
But that's how we got to this.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, but you gotta look at the end results.
I'd like to know if it's in the long term.
Others that you have from the...
You're going to be missing money at the end. You're going to be missing almost $4 million at the end because of the, not putting in what you're saying, because it's calculated on every dollar. Like say, for every dollar, you're going to earn 7.5 or 8.14. So you have to multiply that, by the 1,000. And if you're going to keep out, what are you going to only put in?
Well, the whole thing would be $700,000.
$3 million, $300,000 less.
What's going in is $700,000, whether it's from the members or whether the town. The difference is that the town administrator has said, we'll put in $700 from the taxpayers. I'm just saying, in a year when we're going to have some real problems transitioning out of the hole we created, whether you like it or not, that's the fact. Those $600,000 are now going to be into the tax rate. Right. And all I'm saying is, if we're looking at that and trying to help the townspeople, this may be a way of doing it this year. Not for all time, but as a transition year. That's all.
But it's still going to cost you at the end.
First of all, let me characterize what I think the issue is. I'll put it in my words, and maybe if you're not following the leads, maybe it's, the arc on this thing is 536,000 from the town. And on the ER contribution, I think there's confusion in all the documents we get from the state that says 700,000, 700,000. That's what the town cuts. Check for as the ER contribution, the employer contribution. So is the confusion that that should include both the ER and the EE contribution? So the employer and employee should sum to 700,000, which would mean that the employer contribution doesn't need to be 700, it can be 536. My personal opinion, when I first did the math on this, is that's really where we should be. But that has not been doctrinal conversation in town. We've been stuck on 700,000, and it's not completely stuck, because I think what you also have is a resolution by the council that they would put no less than 700,000 as a town. So there's further confusion, right? So maybe it's only 700, but the council has said the ER contribution will be 700 on its own. The notion being that the faster you retire this thing, the more quickly you leave.
No question, I'm not saying for all time, I'm saying.
So I just think you're going to have the same numbers you have in the actuary's report, because the years ended June 30th, 2014. The employer contribution to the fund was $825,000. The plan member contributions were $166,440. The investment income net of fees, net of fees, $1,157,063. For a total additions to the fund of $2,148,503. Benefits paid $765,309.
760.
Net position improved by $1.383 million. So it's a very good year on the investment side.
Yeah,
And we'll probably not duplicate that jump this year, but,
Actually, the early part of the year, the market has performed remarkably well, so. The question now is where you park your gains.
It's a
Paid out?
based on
Your investment paid out 765,301.
payment as opposed to $860,000 payment.
well, anyway, in a year that we could pay $900,000, that's fine, but we're not in that position this year. There are some things that I think the council should have some little money and flexibility, we should. I mean, we should come together eventually, but we're not so far apart that we can't use a little extra cash here to plug some issues.
Remember, I think it's going to show up at the end, you're going to have that much less money. It shows up down the road.
Investment gains, you don't know that. And you don't know whether Europe is going to come back, whether India is going to emerge in those markets and start, we don't know that. And you don't either.
well, this is one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of 100% funding, because everything in here is such a huge guess. You know, the assumptions that go into this, one of the assumptions that used to go into this was that our police officers would get a 5% increase every year. Well, they don't get a 5% pay raise income every year, but that was in the assumptions. And other assumptions are, you can put your own your investment performance in here. The other assumption is that everybody that we have on the police force now is going to stay in Tiverton forever and retire in Tiverton, which is nonsensical.
All on the same day, all the
All at the same time. So the whole thing has to be taken with a big grain of salt. Big grain of salt. So that's it. We're 62%, a little over 62%.
62.2.
63 or 62?
63%.
So that's pretty healthy.
80%, but listen, that's not.
Somewhere around 65, 70.
We had the 2010, and our improvement has been substantial, period. But, it's
putting a chunk of change in there for that.
It's something that we really should, I think about because
State will ultimately
of where we are.
have a say, the state will ultimately have a say if there's any deviation from the plan that is agreed to fund it.
Right.
Correctly?
Well, except that we are now out of the woods.
But that doesn't relieve them from the
Obligation.
obligation.
I think last year,
Agreed
the
upon.
budget committee putting in 800,000 or so, was great, but, because I won't go there, but I think we consider this as a sort of a cost-saving measure. Donna, you like cost-saving measures, don't you?
Is there any concern, and I mean, I'm new to looking at these kinds of things, but there was this cautionary on page 2 that long-term viability of this plan is dependent on adherence to funding the actuarial recommended contribution each year, including the funding improvement plan. Lower contributions could put the plan at risk of bankruptcy.
Right.
That's
We're meeting the recommended contribution. Yeah.
We've been exceeding the recommended contribution. Well,
we had to catch
we had to exceed it because we had,
bad returns.
well, we had bad returns. We also had someone who really didn't make the payments.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, by being on the plan and being compliant with it, you also got municipal incentive, correct? Which will run out in 2017.
We didn't get any. I don't think we got it. I think we're eligible for it,
What's municipal incentive?
aid to cities and towns. We didn't get it because we didn't get the plan approved the first year or something.
You might get it for this year.
We might get it for this year.
Not last year.
Right. So if we're eligible for it, I mean,
It's not a lot of money, but
it's not, but
it's an incentive.
How much is it, do you know?
What troubles me is when Denise sends me notes saying municipal incentive aid as a program will terminate in fiscal 2017. So even if we get it this year, it really is like a one-time bump.
and it, anything like 50 or 100 or anything like that.
Just in terms of where we squirrel away resources in these kinds of conversations, my only fear is that we must look beyond a one-year time horizon to really catch the tiger by the tail. Because at some point, you're gonna close that landfill and start hauling stuff to Johnston, paying tipping fees and hauling. And that someday is within the parameters of a 3-year budget outlook. As would be any contract you either accept or are forced to accept with your collective bargaining units. So, my personal recommendation to the budget committee, to the council, is we do need to try to limp through as best we can a couple of operating expenditure break-even years and marshal resources for the big whammies that will hit us in a couple of years. We have major expenditures that you have no choice but to fund. Forward thinking would be really meaning a plan for the landfill and trying to knock down some of these debts as best we can. As you can see though, I did recommend cutting it 100,000 because I needed it somewhere else. But I was operating under the assumption that 700 was as low as I could go with that council resolution being on.
You know, this is neither here nor there, but what they say is the plan assets earned a rate of return of approximately 15.3%, resulting in a gain to plan assets of $588,679. And then it goes on to say, additional liability gains due mainly to lower than expected salary increases resulted in a total actuarial gain for the year of $784,000. So, not that you're gonna get 15, but it's something to consider this year only. So,
You're going to contribute the 556 plus the employee, the each contribution.
Right, it's gonna be 700.
It's going to be 156 and
Right, it's
5.
just that the town is not gonna be, it's not gonna be
Correct.
800, it's gonna be,
It's going to be 7.
right.
So it's still going to get what the resolution is
We meet the recommended amount.
Right.
So that's the thing that sort of catches your eye as you try to figure out what is the best thing, so that we don't bump up, or we lessen the possibility that we're at the 4% cap.
Be mindful that this will hit our balance sheet next year after GASB, whatever number, I don't memorize. Don't feel it, it comes in sort of play.
What will hit our balance sheet?
The unfunded liability.
Oh, the unfunded liability.
So all of the financially significant aspects of having this fund.
What about the other, the big unfunded liability, the health and that we're paying?
I don't think OPEB's hitting the balance sheet next year. They're still working on how they're gonna figure that out.
What about post-employment benefits? When will that hit?
That's the scary one.
That's the serious one.
Yeah.
And how everybody will affect that.
Again, not to play my hand with collective bargaining, but this is, you already have a fire union that contributes 1% of their base to OPEB. It's not a lot of money, but it's something. And the police at 0.5%.
And it's something.
And we gotta get everybody up to a slightly higher level.
And what are these?
I'm excited for next year, because when you see, because right now, we've got cities and towns around that may have a similar or better bond rating than Tiverton. When you look at what they're doing with their locally administered pension funds, they're terrible. There's one community that's PAYGO. And when people start to really understand the impact that has on some of the other cities and towns, Tiverton stock will actually go up in the minds of many people, because you've written the bill as a town, precedes my being here, so I have compliments to the people of the town who made the sacrifices to attack this problem, because you won't catch up in the financial statistics, and you'll find yourself being in a better position, relatively speaking, to other communities as a result. Cranston is 20% funded, and they're huge.
Providence is 23% funded.
I don't understand why the city of Providence is still open and functioning.
Yeah, that would be my, investigating the contract desires and wishes, OPEB and Medicare 65.
I think it's important to bring everything into context. The EE contribution on the pension plan for the police, that's the employee contribution, is 10%.
Yeah,
Very high compared to
yes.
anyone else. So if your gross is 55 and your base pay is 45, or 50.
Yes. So, well,
I mean, I think we need to know the actual payout, but I think at some point, we need to grapple with this and make a recommendation.
well, I would also like to, as long as we have the town administrator here tonight, I think we all need to see what the preliminary calculations are on the revenue side, and how short we are, and how close to a 4% increase that we're getting.
Okay, so just a couple of things. First of all, my wife changed her work schedule, so she won't work Thursdays anymore. So I should be able to come regularly. Secondly, so I need to distribute the single audit and the annual financial report.
I think Nancy Mello has, it would be great if you would check with her, but the budget committee, I think Denise Surratt said she had extra copies made for the budget committee.
She did.
Yeah,
She definitely said that.
yeah.
I forgot the rest of your question. All revenues, fees, fines, to the budget committee chairman late this afternoon, along with the council. So for Saturday, the budget workshop, we'll have the revenues with the.
Right, but do we have the preliminary number on the motor vehicle revenue and so do we have the maximum net levy increase and how much, so that we can get a sense on how much our expenses are going up and how much trouble we're in?
I know David's working on it. I will try try to get it a little bit more quickly.
Okay. Well,
We need
because
to finish
these
the
are the,
piece.
well, you know, if we're in that kind of serious trouble, we need to start thinking about,
Well, we need some decisions too on the refinancing, because it's a big savings there.
This is a big one, that, I asked about it a long time ago, and the answer at that time was she wanted to do all three at the same time, and I understood your explanation, no, I heard your explanation. And you're absolutely right, you can't call all three at the same time, you're gonna have to do one at a time. So that's my understanding from speaking to the treasurer, spending most of the day with him today on this year's issue, is that we're in good shape to, she's been making the inquiries with all the necessary parties to give an answer on that. So obviously, we need to turn it around quickly.
Yeah, because you don't find, things go up, toilet paper goes up, this goes up, but if we can look for the overall savings or ways of managing the money, it's all for the good.
and you did some reviews of the tower rentals and such, right?
I'm astounded by the lack of timely response from the solicitor. We have a significant lease addendum that has been proffered by one of our lessees, and I'm intrigued by it, but it's complicated. These contracts are it's a specialized, rarefied air that these people breathe that do telecommunications contracts, and so it's actually an area of expertise of Mr. Tyson's, and I'm waiting for him to respond so I can sign the damn thing, and I'll get my revenue estimate. We lost a few sub-units and we gained a couple, so you'll see I budgeted no increase. But are you shaking your head at me or somebody else?
Looking at the redhead behind you. Sally, you have a question or a statement or?
Do you still need the outside of the school resource officer number? Since we have one. We have the other.
That was a question that was pending.
Yes, that was a question.
Sally,
Yes.
one of the things that you could consider, I think, is paying the entire salary for the, of the school resource, sort of to help the town side. They get free plowing. Why not?
You can roll over there, surplus.
You could use,
On the number now, excuse me.
I think we could use a little assistance.
Yes, ma'am.
54,432.
Now, listen, Louise.
I always listen to Louise.
54,432?
Yes.
That's what the school is.
Yeah, they went up from last year.
Okay, good.
So that goes. My daughter would disagree already about it.
Right, so that goes, the school resource officer. Okay. That's in your budget document. Yeah, 54,400 is now 54, I just lost it, 54,432.
You sat there quietly for 2 hours for that.
Can I ask about the MERS, and are these, the MERS and the fire numbers in the budget document? Are these solid?
Yeah. So these are based on this year's, shall I call them refined contribution rates?
Right.
So, for instance, the employer contribution to the fire MERS plan, the current budget year is 15.13%, next year it's going to be closer to 14.13%. Those kinds of adjustments, almost all of them are down, but down slightly. So that's why the numbers, at first, the treasurer said, where the heck do you get those numbers? And then we pulled a report and did the calculation together. The rates are going down, so absolute dollar contribution will go down as a result.
Okay, because they are all 67,080 to 53,
But I did try
113 to
to explain
104.
the painful details
Right.
here.
Oh, I closed my big book.
At the time of this document, the TRA craft contribution was not being altered. I'm gonna have to double check that. It's a smaller amount, so.
So, we're good to go with that 439,198 for the total municipal pension. You don't expect that to be updated or changed or anything like that? All right, then I'll make a provisional, I'll make a motion to provisionally approve 439,198 for the municipal pension. As recommended by the town administrator.
Second. Okay, all in favor? All opposed? None? Passes unanimously.
And then just so that we're, I'm going to make a motion to approve provisionally approve for operations of $363,635.
What page are you on?
Page 13.
363,635? I'll second that. Provisionally approved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I abstain.
All opposed? One abstention?
And then I think it's best to hold off on the salaries until they sort that out.
Okay. What else we got?
Have you gone through insurance yet? Yes. We did that previous night. There was something else we had a question on, and it was on the police budget that we went around in circles on. Did someone make you aware of the, running around in circles on the police department education incentive?
Yeah, I think the chief told me that we just flip-flopped two numbers. And it was because of the verbiage used to describe them.
Okay, so state education mandated, which is account 6928. That should be 45?
Yes. Trying to find my second page.
It's 14.
Page 14. And then instead of 46, it's 48,516.
So you're on 6928.
6928, state education mandated. It should be 45,000.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yes?
that's what I have in my book.
We're looking at this.
Okay, and then,
Yeah, right,
and then 5115
and then,
is 48,516.
That's how see, that was changed, they said, so that's what we're going to do.
no.
No, it was just flip.
What do you have? Was it 48,516?
Well, that's what the old, that's what the old 6928 was. So if it was just a matter of flip-flop, I know what.
Yeah, but the numbers, my numbers I did my own book into the budget spreadsheet, I thought they flip-flopped.
Okay, so
Education incentive, which is
51,15.
salary incentive would provide police officers for their level of education. Should be 48,560. But he's got people being prorated for degrees.
Right.
That when he gave me his roster earlier in the year, it achieved yet. So, 6928, I should be at 45,000.
Right, okay.
All right, so then we just need to do the math to
Pay
figure
for
out
the
those.
classes, and then once they get the degree, pay more.
So we just need to do the math to figure out what those revised totals are.
Because a very well-known member of the General Assembly says, you know why we call them taxpayers? Because of that was,
And then we can take the provisional. Those two.
$127,400.
What am I looking at? 127. Oh, I see, over here.
Disappear overnight, one night. And the other one is $2,692,835.
It's how much?
I got 2,692,835. Did I do that right?
Sounds about right.
We're adding 2516 to that.
2560?
So it's 46,000 now.
But 3560.
Coming March 2nd, okay.
No, 46 to 48.
It's 45. Without my spreadsheet. Useless.
Where are we?
Do you want to make a motion if you got it, if you have the numbers, make a motion to provisionally approve that.
For the police department salaries, I have $2,692,835.
That's right, yeah, that's right.
So if you want to
Motion.
Well,
What's our motion,
692,
835. So anybody want to make the motion?
I'll make a motion that the salary account be $2,692,835.
provisionally approved
Provisionally.
for
Second.
police department salaries.
Or the second?
I second.
Any discussion? $2,692,835. All in favor?
Yeah,
Any opposed? It's unanimous. And then,
God, it's easy to spend.
The mandated,
the general contractual mandated expense total is,
$127,400.
that's what I put.
I'll make a motion that that figure be changed to $127,400.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous.
And I'd like to thank Mr. Odell for rallying up my dog. He deserves a commendation for his efforts.
Always glad to help an animal in distress.
You'll get the next Thursday.
That was very cute,
All right, what else do we have?
That's it. I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Hold on.
That's a privileged motion.
This is quick. Public Works site visit Saturday morning, who plans to attend?
I do.
Okay.
Oh, that's up on the police, right?
Yeah, right behind the police station. Saturday the 7th, we have the library and senior center.
And the library is the Essex Library, right? No, actually, it's going to be the new library. Oh, really? Yeah, I'm going to that monstrosity.
Let's scratch the floor.
I should specify that it's new.
Confirm that with you. Made out of gold?
Next week's meeting is
That's right.
Public Works landfill next week.
That's not, wow.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of February 19th. With thanks to Ms. Janet.
Does a great job.
Just, the 214, I thought it was, and 270 is mine.
I think Cecil did a great job.
That's right, it's just, you guys see,
Cecil made it.
Other votes for this? I thought we took other ones.
Yeah, right there.
It might be more, but it should be 214 if I'm not mistaken. I'm not good to go, but
What's 214?
I thought the old budget was 214, and then the new one was 217 now.
Mine says 240 in it.
Okay, my mistake then. I
There's
There's a 217.
Was there a 214?
No, I thought it was 2
It's 24 and 217?
24 and 217.
Okay, so you're all set.
make sure.
Okay. Any discussion on the minutes?
No, that's all we did last, we had police chief here. We didn't approve any of his.
We needed to ask the...
And it was just the harbor management, right? Because we pushed up the police pension and the other pensions.
Yes.
So you're right, there was only one.
Okay, all in favor?
Right.
Any opposed? I abstain, I wasn't here. You abstain? I abstain.
Yeah, I've stayed too.
So, what do we got? 7-0.
So Alex, you were here now, right? We're going to be here every week now?
I'll make sure it gets here.
Let's fucking happen.
You'll be here, Alex. Nice sitting back here.
Glad we got it at home. Motion to adjourn, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Good night.